In this video, I'm going to be reading the Kingdom of the Wicked series by Kerri Maniscalco. So I'm going to be reading this trilogy series. As far as I know, it is a YA fantasy series, specifically a romance one. And in this series, there are 3 books: Kingdom of the Wicked, Kingdom of the Cursed, and Kingdom of the Feared. So let's begin with book 1. Confession, I did finish this like over a week ago. A lot of illness in my household right now, so this is the first time I can actually sit down and film anything, but I really enjoyed this a lot. So we're following Amelia and Victoria. It's set in Italy, which is really cool. I don't think I've read a story like that where you're following like an Italian family. Her family comes from a line of witches. Her and her twin sister have some magical abilities, and they're trained by their nonna, or their grandmother. It skipped a generation for some reason, so it's just their grandmother and the 2 of them. And they have a special amulet, and the story kind of sets up with this epilogue where you get a sense that Nana is protecting the twins from something. Something's maybe after them. It's not quite clear at that point, but she has this duty to kind of protect them. They have these special magical amulets that they're not supposed to ever take off. They do spells. Every once in a while, maybe there's like signs to point that maybe something's coming, and so they have to do some protection spells on their families. Then the story kind of begins, and they're 18, and their family owns an Italian restaurant, and their life is full of food and magic, of course. And her twin sister, and obviously their grandmother, is very involved in the restaurant and everything, and that's kind of their life, a very simple life. Amelia, who's our main character that we're following, dreams to like maybe expand the restaurant one day. But Nana's getting nervous because there's signs pointing towards something maybe coming after them. She does tell them stories about the princes of hell. There are 7 princes, each representing a deadly sin. She warns against them. Eventually, Amelia learns from her grandmother that there have been killings, specifically witches. They're on high alert, and unfortunately, one day her sister gets murdered. Not just that, but her heart is taken out. And so she starts on a journey of figuring out who killed her sister. She learns that her sister may had some secrets as well, and she goes about doing a summoning spell, and I forget who she thought she was summoning. I think she didn't quite know, but she ends up summoning Wrath, the Prince of Wrath, and they kind of team up with each other to solve this murder or figure out what happened to her sister. So there's this huge mystery about what happened to her sister, who killed her, who's killing all these witches. I think they came to think that Pride, the Prince of Pride, was looking for a wife in order to stop this curse. The princes have been cursed, and he needs a wife in order to break the curse. But all these witches, I guess he is proposing to, gets killed. This is obviously a fantasy romance. Pretty obvious who it is between. I had a lot of fun with this. We do also get introduced to 3 other princes, so you get to see greed and envy and lust, which is a lot of fun, and you get to see them with their abilities. Yeah, I don't know, I just had so much fun with this. Obviously it's a fantasy romance, so you feel this tension between Amelia and Wrath, and there's this whole mystery happening, and you know, she just has this huge love for her sister, but also her sister may or may not have had secrets herself. And I honestly, like, I kind of predicted who done it, but I also didn't quite. This reads very much like a fantasy, meaning like, even though it's kind of set in our world, it feels like a fantasy world because it's the world full of witches and demons. Not quite an urban fantasy, and it kind of feels like late 1800s kind of setting, a lot of cobblestones and like churches and things like that. So I really liked it. I was really obsessed. I was really obsessed also, obviously, with the romance. I usually am with these kind of stories. I guess I hate to love romance. You can say they had really good banter between the 2 of them, which I really loved. Really enjoyed kind of like the witch element of the story. Haven't read a lot of stories with witches in them, and so there was quite a bit of magic in here, which was a lot of fun. So I definitely recommend it. Like, I gave it 5 stars. I absolutely loved it, and I'm so excited to continue reading. So I finished Kingdom of the Cursed yesterday, and confession, it was very, very different than book 1. I wasn't anticipating that. I didn't think it was gonna be so different. I don't know what I thought. I liked a lot of it, but the thing that was very different was the tone. This turned to be like an adult romance. It's quite explicit with the sex scenes and stuff like that. I thought this was a YA fantasy, and I'm not upset or anything. I really still loved it a lot, but I just was surprised because I'm pretty sure this is marketed as a YA fantasy, and it's still very much fantasy, still very much like a fantasy romance, but I didn't think there was gonna be such explicit stuff in here. I did like it, but I felt like our main character was flip-flopping a lot, like internally. I feel like the main focus was about her conflicted feelings over Wrath. So the romance definitely develops a lot more in this one. In this one, what happens is Amelia decides to go to the underworld. Wraith comes and collects her, and so she goes to the underworld with Wrath, and he accompanies her. I like the interpretation of this underworld. And then she arrives at Wrath's palace. Each of the princes have their own palace, and so she's staying there. Things progress from there. Clearly, like, it's a fantasy romance. I think we already know who the romance is between, so there's a lot of tension between Amelia and Wrath, and you know, she's betrothed to someone else, but feelings are still there. This really reminded me of like A Court of Mist and Fury, and also like the Hades and Persephone trilogy by Scarlett St. Clair. A lot of those vibes, specifically like her being in the underworld. You know, he lives in a castle, she's living in opulence, like all these things. She has her own like suites and stuff. So, and there's a huge library and just like a lot of like similar stuff there. I wasn't sure how I was feeling at first, or through the whole book. I was like kind of back and forth. I still loved it. Like, it was a lot of fun, and I like the fantasy and I like the romance. But for one thing, I found Amelia kind of annoying because she kept on thinking like, Wrath is so angry with me, and like he's always angry, and just not sure how she feels about him. And like, it didn't make any sense to me, like her confusion about how he feels, because he's like taking care of her and she's staying like in these like opulent suites and he's always there, and I'm like, I don't know how you're confused about how he feels about you, but okay. And like some things just really bothered me that just like didn't make sense. Like, this is not a spoiler at all, but like she has like this massive wardrobe, and like she's looking at this bathrobe, and it's like beautiful, and clearly like he is particular with details when it comes to the things that he's giving her and providing for her. Specifically, this robe has special details that's related to them as characters and whatever, right? And so, but then she just throws it in the fire for like absolutely no reason. And at first I'm like, oh, okay, like maybe she's doing this because she has to like go her own way and like go on an adventure, and she has to like abandon her feelings and forget about him. But no, she's still there. So I'm like, what's the whole point of that scene? Like, I don't understand. I don't know. There was just like random weird things like that. And the fact that she was back and forth, I'm like, I don't know how clear he can make it, but he likes you. Like, he doesn't say it in words. The book kind of beats it over the head that his philosophy is showing, not telling, or actions, not words kind of thing. Like, he even has that tattooed on his body. So like, I don't understand where the confusion is. I guess you can kind of say this has a bit of a mystery in it. I feel like it was less mystery in this one, even though there technically is a mystery, but I feel like it's more about the romance. And I was kind of still a little confused by the end. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Maybe because there wasn't enough time to like focus in on it. And her character is just very different, because And her character in book 1, obviously she went through a lot of transformation and she's on like a revenge plot basically in this one. In some ways I didn't like her because she was almost unrecognizable, but I guess maybe that's the point. Some of the reveals to me felt like so obvious that I'm surprised she couldn't just figure it out on her own earlier on. So I don't know, like I feel like this is more of a 4-star. Like my enjoyment was still like a 5-star, but I felt like I was kind of rolling my eyes sometimes. I still am loving it, and I'm really excited for book 3 because it went into a totally different direction. I was surprised who maybe the big bad is. I think I'll say it that way. I didn't see that coming, and so there's still a lot of questions that still need to be answered, so I am looking forward to that. I am excited to pick up the 3rd one, so I think I have to give this a 4-star, but it was still really good, and I'm still really enjoying the series. So I'm halfway through Kingdom of the Feared. Pretty close, not quite, but I'm almost there. I've been kind of reading this slowly. I've been taking my time. I'm not sure how I feel about this series anymore. Like, I'm still really enjoying it, but when I think about what I really liked about book 1, it's totally different. There isn't as much witch magic. There's still magic because it's a fantasy, but it's not witchy at all. And then book 1 was more like a murder mystery, where book 2 and 3 still have like mystery elements, but it's more about Amelia figuring out who she is. And the setting is completely different in book 2 and 3. It's set not in Italy. It's set in the underworld. And so it's just very different. Plus it's more adult. This is very much an adult fantasy romance, which I like, but in book 1, it wasn't like that at all. It felt very YA. And I think it was just very jarring. I don't know, I just felt like it was out of the blue. I wasn't anticipating it. It doesn't make it bad, but I kind of wish I knew. I think my point is you kind of have to prepare yourself to realize you're gonna go on a journey, and the things that maybe you like in book 1 is not what you're gonna get in books 2 and 3. And that the things I really liked about book 1 was the setting. It was set in Italy. There's lots of food. It's set in a restaurant, and Amelia is trying to find the murderer of her sister. It kind of is a fantasy because she has witch magic, and we're in this world where that's possible, but I guess it reads more like an urban fantasy, where books 2 and 3 are like very much a fantasy. Things and people who were threatening in book 1 aren't not so much anymore in books 2 and 3. And the reveals about Amelia are, I guess, surprising and not what you expect them to be. Maybe that's part of the point. It's just jarring when you're expecting one thing and getting something completely different. I'm still really enjoying it, and I'm still really curious to like find out the answers. Like, one of the best things about a last book in a series is you finally get to see what the answers are. Things finally get revealed, and you've been waiting for these reveals for a long time. So I am more satisfied about that. I am curious to see who the big bad is, because that's very like unclear and ambiguous. There's this mystery surrounding this curse, or like a couple of curses. Confession, I am kind of confused a little bit because in some ways I kind of don't care anymore, but I'm still really enjoying it. There was a couple fight scenes, and I feel like the second fight scene was like a little bit better, but I remember during the first fight scene, it felt very clear that she doesn't write fight scenes really, and she was just using really a lot of flowery language to describe the fight, which made me feel like she doesn't write that very often. It wasn't a very long scene, but I don't know. That's one criticism of mine. Yeah, I'm kind of have mixed feelings about it. I'm still really liking it. It's not like I hate it or anything and I dislike it. It's just very different than what was kind of presented to us in book 1. I loved book 1. Like, I gave it 5 stars and I was obsessed with it. And I kind of miss the witchy magic, honestly. Like, there's like none in books 2 and 3. If you're hoping for that throughout the entire series, like, you're kind of missing out. Hopefully I can finish this today. We'll see. So I did finish Kingdom of the Feared yesterday. I kind of really pushed myself to finish it. What are my final thoughts? I don't even know. I think I liked this the least out of the 3 books. My favorite is most definitely book 1. If you liked book 1, you need to really prepare yourself for a totally different story throughout the rest of the trilogy. After finishing this, it's very clear that the author had a direction that she was going in. It's not like she haphazardly created the series. She had a plan and she followed through. So if you like very drastic directions when it comes to your fantasy, where in book 1 you think it's one kind of story, but then by the time you get to the 3rd book it's totally different, then you might really like this series. The series is basically set in the underworld. I feel like I need to put that out there because, like I said, book 1, they made it seem like it's going to be like set in Italy, this entire trilogy, and it's not. Like, the main focus is the underworld. I guess that would make sense since it's about witches and the princes of hell. I did like the underworld. It's not like I didn't. It's just a very different story. Also, I feel like I have to say, and I have said already, but this is an adult fantasy romance. I don't know why this is marketed as YA. I understand a little bit because people who read YA are usually adults like myself, and people who read YA fantasy usually are at heart YA fantasy romance reader. I understand that, but this is like released through Little Brown, like an imprint. Let's see if I can look it up. So it's a Hatchet book group, but it's Little Brown and Company, which from my understanding is like a children's imprint, I guess of Hatchet books. And I don't know, I just find it really confusing. It's almost like it was trying to be like A Court of Thorns and Roses, where book 1 it's like more YA, and then book 2 and further it's more adult. But I just rather it just be marketed as an adult, because if you're a young adult person and you weren't expecting like explicit sex scenes, like, I think it could be upsetting. I'm not saying teens can't read explicit content, but it's just more like your expectation of the story. And so I would like to know your opinion on that kind of topic, how you feel about that. Like, even just the way it looks like a YA story. Some adult fantasy series do kind of still have the YA feel and are still considered adult, but I don't know. I need to do some more research to see for sure whether or not this is considered YA or not. I haven't looked on Goodreads or anything, but I'm almost positive I saw this on the YA list on the New York Times. So I don't know, it's just surprising. I enjoyed this. I was thankful to finally get all the reveals that we were expecting. This almost left it was complete. It's a complete trilogy, but there were some threads. They still closed them. They acknowledged the threads, and the acknowledgement was like, okay, this story or thread isn't closed, but maybe one day. Like, I'm almost wondering if she's going to continue writing in this series, maybe have a second trilogy or something. I don't know, but there were some things that were left unanswered. The romance in here was a little bit less fun because they were basically together, so there wasn't really any angst. And eventually, like, all the sex scenes just kind of got boring after a while. Like, okay, you're together, we get it. I was more interested in the fantasy and mystery. This felt like more of a mystery than book 2 did. And there were kind of like 2 mysteries happening. I felt like one mystery was almost unnecessary. I didn't understand why it was even there. I prefer the overall mystery of like all the questions, I guess. I don't know how to describe it without spoiling it, but I think in the end it feels like a 4-star, but maybe almost like a 3.75 because of some annoyances I had in this story. So I guess the question is, do I recommend this series? And I would say yes. If you're looking for adult fantasy romance, I would definitely recommend it. If you like underworld vibes, you know, devil, princes of hell romances, almost kind of like Hades and Persephone a little bit. If you like witch magic, there is some in here. One complaint I had for book 2 there was no witch magic. There's a little bit in book 3. The witchy stuff is mostly in book 1. But yeah, I had a lot of fun reading this. I really did. I did enjoy it. It's not like I disliked it. I think it's just a strange series to consume. So book 1, I gave 5 stars. Book 2, I gave 4. And then book 3, I guess 3.75. So a little bit disappointing, but it's still a really solid series. I consider this more like a 4-star series. If you like YA fantasy series, I recommend you click on this video and check it out. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.